Hello, I'm Orkan Amashov. Tensions between the government of Serbia and the Pristina administration have escalated after an explosion on Friday hit a canal in North Kosovo that sends water to the region's two major power plants. The local authorities of Kosovo arrested 8 individuals on suspicion of planning and organizing the blast, with Prime Minister Albin Kurti blaming the Serbian government. Serbia's President Aleksandar Vučić denied what he said were baseless accusations about Belgrade's involvement in the incident. Serbia does not recognize Kosovo as a sovereign state, officially viewing the territory in question as its autonomous province of Kosovo and Metohija. Belgrade and Pristina have enjoyed some degree of normal ties, particularly since 2020, amidst sporadic flare-ups. Joining me now are Stevan Jovanovic, Vice President at the Center for International Relations, based in Belgrade, and former member of the Serbian Parliament, and Merih Demirtas, researcher and former diplomat, joining from Ankara. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Jovanovic, perhaps we could begin by asking the question, putting the question to you in the first place. What is your reflection about the latest blast? I mean, it is described as a very significant development. And what have you made of it?
Well, this is a very clearly orchestrated and coordinated, well-coordinated campaign of the Kurti's regime in Pristina against the Serbian community, because this has happened the part where the majority of people are Serbs. It happened in the Serbian, in the northern part of Kosovo. Simply, it as the Serbian population lives in north of Kosovo. This is a very well orchestrated, coordinated thing by the Kurti's regime with one intention: to actually make the fear among the Serbian population in Kosovo and to do ethnic cleansing of the small Serbian community who's now living in Kosovo.
So your view is that it's actually organized and orchestrated by the Pristina administration. Mr. Demirtas, what would be your take on the self-same subject? Mr. Demirtas, are you able to hear? Please, yeah, about the latest blast that took place on Friday. What is your view on that?
Sometimes that the connection is not so good. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, we are. My question was is about what happened last Friday, about the massive blast. And we earlier mentioned that the mutual accusations between Belgrade and Pristina are flying in the air. The Prime Minister, Albin Kurti, accused Serbia of orchestrating this incident, and Serbian President effectively retorted, saying that Belgrade has nothing to do with this. What would be your take on this mutual accusations? Okay, sorry, it looks like that we lost our contact with Mr. Demirtas. Mr. Jovanovic, may I just come back to you about the self-same question again?
Sure.
So what is quite interesting about the latest development is that in the past couple of months, NATO peacekeeping mission, which effectively acted and operated as Kosovo's army, de facto army since 1999, increased its military footprint in the region in anticipation of escalation. What does this signify, you think?
Actually, this is very worrying for the small Serbian community, who's now is under enormous pressure by the regime in Pristina, led by Prime Minister Kurti. It's because he actually used last night's event to bring so-called Kosovo security forces in the north. Just for your viewers who are not familiar with the situation on the ground, actually it's not allowed for the Kosovo security forces to enter northern part of Kosovo. So last night he used this opportunity Prime Minister Kurti used this opportunity to bring Kosovo security forces in the northern part of Kosovo to threaten Serbian and to put pressure on Serbian community who lives there with only one intention, to actually, with this pressure, to put them to get out from Kosovo and to make an ethnic cleansing in Kosovo. What does it mean for the regional stability? I think this is very worrying for the regional stability, because unilateral steps, these unilateral moves, are actually very worrying for the stability in the Western Balkans, especially when we talk about Serbia and Kosovo.
Mr. Jovanovic, since we have lost our contact with Mr. Demirtas, I'd like to put to you one more question before he's able to join. So I would like to reflect on the current situation in North Kosovo. As we understand, that is part of the Kosovo region, but it is a Serb majority part of Kosovo. And what is the extent of the administrative influence exerted by Pristina administration there? We understand that it's de facto controlled by Belgrade. Could you just walk us through that nitty-gritty element enveloping that particular area with Serb majority?
Sorry for that connection. I think I cannot see you, but still I would like to join with my voice maybe. You can hear me, yes?
We can hear you. I mean, bearing in mind that you're back already, allow me to actually provide floor for you to be able to reflect on what happened. So my earlier question was about this mutual accusations flying in the air between Belgrade and Pristina. And we know that the Prime Minister Kurti did accuse Serbia of orchestrating this incident. And we know that Serbian president vehemently rejected this accusation. So what is your take on this mutual accusations?
Thank you for giving me this chance. Again, I just responded to maybe the first question, but my voice unfortunately did not arrive there. I'm sorry for this connection problem. But still, yes, as I respond in this first question, there's the unfortunate times maybe for such an unfortunate happening is called as a terrorist attack by one prime minister and the prime minister of Kosovo, and just directly accusing of another head of this country, which is Mr. Vučić. And this is unfortunate times because, as we all know, that the same time, I mean, this Friday night, or still continuing in our southern region in Syria, also much more southern in still Palestine and Lebanon, in our northern parts in Ukrainian territories, we're still having very high tensive atmosphere. And now another atmosphere we just do not want to see is now happening between these two countries. Actually, Kosovo and Serbia has some long issues, of course. Historically, they must come together and they must have this cooperation and diplomatic atmosphere between themselves. They know that. Also, Mr. Vučić sometimes repeated so openly that he wants to have some openings to this Kosovo issue, although he has some, background problems and historically also with the Serbian sensitivities. We all know that. But as Turkey and the other players also repeat in any international platform, we want to see these two important actors of Balkans or Southeastern Europe together in any cooperation atmosphere. We can come together, I mean, Turkey, Russia, some senses with some Western countries and some European Union members, also to investigate this issue, because this issue is a very, tensive, and it affects maybe hundreds of people. And it can affect a social and communitarian problem between these two important countries now. And I think we can come together as international partners and maybe some neutral collaborators.
Mr. Jovanovic, you heard what Mr. Demirtas said, but as I understand, the government of Serbia does not recognize Kosovo as a sovereign state, but still the relations between Belgrade and Pristina have been in the trajectory of normalization over the past few years. We remember the Brussels Agreement signed back in 2013. We know that there was another normalization document signed in 2020. Do you think that after all that's happened, after all of those normalization efforts, we know that amidst normalization, along the normalization, there have been quite a number of episodes of which could be described as flare-ups as well. But what does the current juncture signify for the future of the region? Do you think that we are sort of in the process of observing inception of a new type of escalation in the region?
Well, you have mentioned the Brussels Agreement from 2013, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, when we talk about Kosovo, this agreement was important because he envisaged the establishment of Association of Serbian municipalities in Kosovo. For more than 10 years, it was not accepted by the regime in Pristina and the government in so-called government in Pristina. As you mentioned, Serbia do not recognize Kosovo, and Serbia will not recognize Kosovo as an independent state, but we are doing our best to make life of ordinary people normal, both in Serbia and northern part of Kosovo and in the rest of Kosovo and Metohija. But unfortunately, with this escalation of conflict, especially, we need to view this happening in northern part of Kosovo last night. Actually, it was like we can watch also as a propaganda act, coordinated propaganda act by Prime Minister Kurti, because right now you have election campaign in Kosovo. Let's be very clear, this was an act of provocation, and as we heard from Serbian authorities, we call for international investigation of this what has happened in Kosovo, because we see this as some pressure on Serbian community in Kosovo, and Serbia will not turn a blind eye when it comes to the protection of the Serbian community in Kosovo. So this kind of unilateral actions, which we are against, this kind of unilateral action will not bring peace and stability in the Balkans. Contrary, it will bring instability and conflict in the Balkans, and I think that this is not something what we want to see once again on this region, in this region.
Mr. Demirtas, I mean, Mr. Jovanovic described the latest incident as a unilateral act orchestrated by the administration in Pristina. What is your take on this? I mean, we all understand that we are in the realm of uncertainty in many ways. Mutual accusations are flying in the air. And actually, earlier, before this conversation, I was in the process of talking to one Turkish expert based in Ankara, and he actually talked about third-party involvement. I mean, third-party involvement meaning that it's neither Belgrade or Pristina, it's somewhere else. What would be your take on this proposition?
I completely agree. I mean, the third party, maybe fourth party, I mean, these parties can be increased, because I think Russia will have another important saying maybe in this diplomatic atmosphere of the Balkans. I mean, also another player, which is European Union. I mean, like Austria, Germany, even non-European European Union member, United Kingdom, has some sayings in such affairs. I mean, all these parties can have some, representatives in such an investigation. We completely agree that such an investigation makes some, openings in diplomatic corridors, and this diplomacy needs. I mean, in this time of uncertainties, as you said, we need such diplomatic openings more and more. I mean, we all know that this tensive atmosphere is not declining. Every day we are waking up with some another terrible, maybe shocking news from another region. I mean, which is also completely maybe encircled all countries, also Turkey, in the southern, northern, and western parts. We have seen many of such incidents. So I could not say that this was one organized event of some government, of some party, but also we have some different populations. We have some different communities ethnically. We have known that. I mean, inside Kosovo, also inside Serbia, we all know that historically these different communities and different members of societies have some, demands through the history and through the course of events. So we should also listen to them. We should also listen to these representatives, what they are saying. As also the other valuable expert said, that the Serbian community in Kosovo, I mean, they also need to make some comments on what's happening now, because the event is not just one event. Last months, we hear also another shocking, events which are so destructive results inside Kosovo, especially not in Kosovo. So we must come together, to discuss these issues. Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Jovanovic, would you be able to reflect on the theory in line with which a certain third party may be involved in this incident? What is your take on this proposition?
Serbia is absolutely open for any international investigation to have like evidence what has happened in northern Kosovo. We are absolutely for that proposition. But what is important actually is that whatever the evidence are of this event is to secure to the Serbian community to stay in their homes, in their lands, because the Serbian community in Kosovo is now probably the ethnic group, most endangered ethnic group on European soil. So first of all, we need to protect those people who are living there and who are under attack and enormous pressure. Because they're a community who are living in a very difficult circumstances, living under enormous pressure by Prime Minister Kurti, not only with the events that has happened last night, but during the last several months and years, they're under enormous pressure. So basically, we need to find a way to help those people who are living there, but as well to protect the peace and stability in the Balkans and in Kosovo. These unilateral actions will not bring peace and stability in the Balkans. So all stakeholders, including the European Union, who is actually our mediator, let's say, in negotiations between Belgrade and Pristina, but all other actors, including P5 and UN Security Council, also be engaged to have like peace and stability in the Balkans. Otherwise, we will be faced every day with the. Sorry, I lost you, and I hear some.
No, we are able to hear you. Please, pray continue. Pray continue.
Okay, sure. So basically, I believe that all international actors, including P5 and the Security Council, needs to help region to stay calm and to preserve peace and stability. But with the unilateral actions, as I said, unilateral actions by Pristina, it will not bring peace and stability. And this threatening persecution of Serbian people who are living in northern Kosovo will not bring stability, unfortunately. And as I said, I think that Serbia should stay calm and should not turn a blind eye, and will not turn a blind eye on a pressure who's now on the pressure on the Serbian community.
Thank you. My last question, probably my last question, I'm not entirely sure if it's going to be last or not, but my question is going to be about the steps that European Union is likely to take. We know that we have the brand new EU High Representative for Foreign Policy, Kaja Kallas, and she is widely believed as somebody with a very strong anti-Russian sentiment. And some experts believe that this could lead to a more confrontational approach towards Serbia. Mr. Demirtas, first of all, let's hear from you, and then I will ask Mr. Jovanovic to share his reflections on the self-same.
Yes, thank you. As I said, also in my also first and second response, Serbia has a strong government. We know that Mr. Vučić, for many years, he made a lead. I mean, he also transformed, maybe reformed his country. Sometimes he was being criticized with being also unilateral. Also, he's a strong leader. He's compared also with our president, with Mr. Orban, by some European Union member states. Also, Mr. Putin and Russia is always in the discussions. And we can see that these countries have some commonalities. That they want to, first of all, reform, and they want to make this in a harsh, maybe in sometimes tense and very sensitive atmosphere. We know that European Union has some priorities. The democratic understanding, as we all wish to see in our communities. It is the number one rule also in our modern civilized world. We all know that. But the sensitivity of geography, I mean, look about our geography. I mean, Turkey is also Serbia in the events after just the Cold War and also before the Cold War. We can say that this country, I mean, Serbia, has had not also so, comfortable zone. It had some historical and social, we all know that, and communitarian issues to be solved, also like our country, also to some extent Hungary or Russian case. But European Union members or European Union high representatives also must understand such a sensitive and such a transformative atmosphere in countries like Serbia. They want to come with some diplomatic agenda, with maybe some more skilled diplomatic agenda. Sometimes diplomacy can be so unilateral also. It has only one book, but I can say that diplomacy does not have only one book. I mean, we must have some different sources of books, some different sources of theories in our agenda, in our, daily schedule, because in some countries, especially in those times, and in this wider Eurasian region, I want to call, which also I will include even this Iran and Middle Eastern axis. I mean, all these countries has some voices now in this transformation years. European Union must have a leading role. I agree with that because they have a very important diplomatic tradition. But when they represent their own union, member countries, these high representatives must, first of all, be briefed and must have a more deeper knowledge about their social and cultural, common or sensitive agendas of these countries. I can say European Union and European member states will have so contributive role to the future of the Balkan states because they are really dynamic, energetic, and motivated population countries, and we want to see also Kosovo and Serbia in the same table in an international atmosphere. We can see this.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jovanovic, the self-same question is to you. What do you think that EU stance is going to be, of course, and do you think that there will be element of anti-Serbian, the ingredients within that position?
Well, when it comes to the Belgrade and Pristina dialogue, unfortunately, in couple of years, in last few years actually, EU showed a lot of weaknesses, and EU was unable to push both sides to sit down and to find solutions for the multiple issues for normalizations of the relations. Unfortunately, I also saw that once again needs to emphasize this. Actually, regime in Pristina led by Prime Minister Kurti, they actually don't want to sit down and to negotiate. They actually have their own policies and they're not ready for the compromise solutions. But in the coming years, with the new administration in EU, I hope so that they will be able to facilitate the dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina. But unfortunately, when I see how it looks and who's going to lead the European Union in next couple of years, I think that they will be more focused on other issues like war in Ukraine and difficulties with the functioning of European Union, and that they will not be able to facilitate this dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina. This is why I think that the other international actors like the United States with the new Trump administration and the other actors, regional actors like Turkey or Russian Federation who are interested in the Balkans can help us to facilitate this dialogue, but under the auspices of the United Nations Security Council. So basically, I think that the dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina should be conducted in the under umbrella of the United Nations Security Council, with involvement of all international actors like Russia and others who are, and China, of course, who are in this role are respecting international law and respecting the territorial integrity and of Serbia. Only with the respecting of international law, with the respect of UN Charter and the territorial integrity of all UN member states, we can have peace and stability in the Balkans.
Mr. Jovanovic, allow me to put to you a very blunt question, and I hope that I will get a very clear answer. What does the solution on the basis of international law actually mean for the status of Kosovo? Does it mean being some sort of autonomous part of Serbia or being an independent state in the fullness of time? Mr. Jovanovic?
Well, for Serbia, it's not acceptable. This is our red line. For us, it's not acceptable unilateral actions of and unilateral declaration of independence of Kosovo. So, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, indeed. Please.
Yeah, but for Serbia, we want that's the principle of territorial integrity and sovereignty of all UN member states to be respected. So we are ready to have a dialogue on all creative issues, all creative way of solving this Kosovo issue. But our red line is that we are not ready to recognize Kosovo independent state. We can talk about autonomy. We can talk about different way of doing this issue, but we cannot accept independence of Kosovo. This is against international law. This is against Resolution 1244 of the United Nations, and this is against the UN Charter. So today, when you have these hypocrisies in Europe, that they are calling for respect of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, at the same time, majority of EU member states are recognizing Kosovo as an independent state. So hypocrisies cannot last for long. So this is why we are calling to back to the principle of the international law and the respect of territorial integrity and sovereignty of all UN member states, including Serbia. In this framework, we can think out of the box, we can try to find a solution, but we cannot accept secession of the part of our territory.
That's very, very clear, Mr. Jovanovic. Mr. Demirtas, bearing in mind that I put a qualitatively new question, different question to Jovanovic, if you would like to say about that was most welcome, but otherwise we may conclude our conversation.
Yes, this self-determination principle is a very still sensitive principle of international law, as Mr. Jovanovic said, that some countries accept the other countries for their territorial integrity and humanitarian or social situations they are not ready for accepting such self-determination procedures. We all know that. This is a so sensitive issue for academic circles, also for diplomacy. Maybe still the number one issue for modern or postmodern ages still in this time. Because of this, we have so many issues in the Middle Eastern cases, and even Caucasia and the other parts of the world. We have seen such problems, but Kosovo, for the majority of the world now, is an independent state. Turkey also shares this view. We have some positive relations with this entity, and we want to see this.
Of the world.
It's about the 110 countries. 120 nearly countries.
Gentlemen, I appreciate that we reached a very interesting point. I would have wished to continue this conversation from now on, but my colleagues are telling me that we have to conclude here, and hopefully in the fullness of time we have a fresh opportunity.
We all respect the Serbian priorities also, and we respect them, we understand them. Yes.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm most grateful to both of you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's right.
It's very pleasure.
This was Stephen Jovanovic, Vice President of the Center for International Relations based in Belgrade, former member of the Serbian Parliament, and Mr. Melih Demirtas, researcher and former diplomat who joined from Ankara. So let's move into the South Caucasus, where in Georgia the tensions actually are very, very high and the pressure is ramping up. Demonstrations erupted in Tbilisi and other major cities of the country. subsequent to Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze's announcement on his government's decision to suspend EU accession talks made on the 24th of November, are still underway. Yesterday, protesters gathered across Georgia for a third consecutive night of demonstrations, and it is expected that the rallies will continue throughout today and also during the forthcoming days. More than 100 demonstrators were arrested as crowds clashed with police Friday night, according to the country's Interior Ministry. Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze said that 50 police officers were injured at the hands of the violent protesters, who threw Molotov cocktails, pyrotechnics, glass, stones at the police. Kobakhidze has also lashed out at European politicians for hurling a cascade of insults at the Georgian government. In the meantime, Georgia's President Salome Zurabishvili said that she intends to stay in post until new parliamentary elections are held, describing the current parliament as illegitimate and herself as the only source of legitimate authority in the country. Joining me now in the studio, our own Anita Sharma. Thank you very much indeed for being with us today.
Thank you, Orkin.
It looks
big
like
developments indeed.
Yeah, indeed. It looks like the pressure is ramping up in Georgia, and it looks like that it will continue for some considerable time.
Absolutely, and that's a great place to start, because you and I have been talking about this now for the third day, as we presumably are carrying into the fourth day now of these protests. And when you and I sat down and discussed this with our viewers, you made a critical point. You said, look, in order for this to stand, in order for this protest to stick, it has to be not just tens of thousands of people. We're talking close to 100,000 people that have to spill into the streets. It has to be a bit more aggressive, and it has to have more staying power if, in fact, they want the Georgian Dream Party, the governing party, the ruling party, to take any action whatsoever. So the critical question now, I'm sure that you and various pundits will be asking is, are we at that point yet? I would think some would say we may be getting there, but we still need to see a little bit more of this consternation, if you will, from the protesters, showing the government that this is not going to stand. And let's back into this. November 28th, right? That's when the Georgian Prime Minister had essentially said he was withdrawing talks to join the EU, suspending those talks until 2028. We consequently saw at that point, I think dozens of people spilling into the streets. What's now turned into thousands of people spilling into the streets. We know they're staying overnight, Orkin. We know that they're lighting bonfires to stay warm. And there does seem to be this considerable effort, if you will, to prove to the government that we are not going to accept what you are putting out at this time. For the Prime Minister's point, going back to November 28th, when he decided to halt the talks, he had essentially said that he was rather displeased, and I'm being very diplomatic here, but he was not happy with the way he perceived the EU to be punting orders at his country. And he said, and I quote, "The EU must prove that it respects Georgia's dignity," a key word, dignity, "and protects its national interests plus values." So he halts, protesters move in, and we know that the Georgian president has been anything short of, she's been terribly vocal in the streets with the protesters, calling for the prime minister to hold another election. Again, something the EU has asked the Georgian prime minister to do. That, of course, didn't sit well with the prime minister either, who said, wait a second, who's calling the shots here? We'll decide when an election is held. And also, who are you to say that our elections are fair or unfair? So therein lies the rub. It'll be very interesting now to see where this goes from here. What are your thoughts?
Well, as earlier I mentioned during our previous conversations, I think for the protest to achieve a considerable success, there needs to be an attainment of critical mass. And I describe critical mass on the basis of 4 linchpins. One is duration. It should last for as long as it's humanly possible. And number 2 element is, of course, the number of people attending this protest. So far, what we have seen, about 30,000, 40,000 people. We always hear the figure tens of thousands of people. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? We're not entirely sure. I imagine the overall figure, although do not quote me on that, it's about 30,000 to 40,000 people in central Tbilisi. And of course, there must be an element of confrontation, which is there. and because, as we understand, protesters were trying to go through the police cordons, trying to enter the parliament building, and police was reacting. They were using tear gas, pepper spray, water cannons, as usual, of course. And we also know that about, as I mentioned earlier, 50 police officers have been injured throughout the past few days. We know that about 100 diplomats of the Foreign Office, they signed a statement in which they accused the government of violating Georgia's constitution. Actually, tomorrow I'm planning to interview very interesting characters from Georgia, and during those interviews, of course, I will pose this question. It's a very interesting moment. Some people would say that Georgia is now facing some sort of civilizational choice between Russia and European Union. I think there are certain limitations to this proposition in many ways, because Georgian Dream Party would never classify itself as pro-Russian. In fact, currently there are no diplomatic relations, official diplomatic relations between Tbilisi and Moscow. We understand that certain part of Georgia is under foreign control, and we understand this is tantamount as a violation of Georgian territorial integrity. We also understand that for Georgian Dream Party, more balanced, more calibrated approach when it comes to dealing with European Union seems to be the best possible approach. Whatever Irakli Kobakidze may say about Georgia's EU aspirations, long-term EU aspirations, I think from the perspective of the opposition and the EU and Western governments, he will always look less European and more Russia-oriented. In the final analysis, I think it seems that the question about the dichotomy between the Article 78 of the Georgian Constitution and this notion of sovereignty promoted by the government and by the church as well, which effectively signals some form of unfettered sovereignty, which is described as an end in itself. These two elements will never properly coalesce into one single constitutional structure, because Georgian constitution says that it is Georgia's ambition to become a member of the European Union, and all the steps taken by the Georgian government should be in line with this noble ambition. But does it mean that suspending EU accession talks until 2028 actually militates against this constitutional principle? Because what Kobakidze is saying is that Georgia will be ready to join European Union at some point later, and the conducive circumstances will be established after 2028. Within this landscape, the position maintained by Salome Zurabishvili is of great interest. She does not look like a lady of excessively considerable influence. She has got some sway over Georgian society, and the current juncture is very...
She certainly has sway over the microphone.
Indeed, goes without saying.
She's getting a lot of coverage, is she not, with respect to being alongside the protesters and voicing these concerns? What was that quote where she said basically a revolution is now underway, a movement is now underway? She is not mincing words.
Yes, indeed. And also she's in league with 4 opposition parties. They're working together. There are those in the opposition who would question her moral credentials. They would say that she served under President Saakashvili, and she was actually in league with Georgian Dream Party earlier. And at this juncture, due to the circumstances that have been established in Georgia, now she looks like on the side of the opposition. But in reality, her own past contains lots of questions that need to be asked and preferably answered too. But in this situation, the question emerges about what will happen next.
Correct.
This is a very important question, because my feeling is that this protest, this wave of protests, will continue for some considerable time. I think tomorrow will not be different to today. I think that it will happen throughout the next few days. But the question is, what will be the ultimate eventuality? I think that ultimate eventuality will be ultimately decided by a couple of factors. One is extent of EU support for the opposition. I think also the self-confidence of the government will play an important role. Some critics of the current government, pro-Georgian government, may say that their outward confidence actually mask their inner anxieties. But in reality, when you look at the numbers on the streets, when you look at the modus operandi of the government, and certain degree of hopelessness that we have seen about the opposition, I'm not particularly inclined to think that these protests will lead to something drastic anytime soon. But never say never. What would you say?
Well, that's a really interesting point, and I believe a lot of people would be on side with you there. The question that I actually have for you, dovetailing out of that, how significant is it, though, that initially we saw the protests taking place in Tbilisi, and we already know that Tbilisi, for the large part, is pro-EU. So that was not a surprise to anyone. Is that fair?
Fair
But
indeed.
now we're finding out, Orkan, that these protests are now spilling into other cities within the country. Is that not perhaps a bit of will that sit comfortably with the ruling party, with the governing party, that now this is spreading outside of Tbilisi?
Yes, indeed. That's a very good point that you made, because initially it was mostly concentrated in Tbilisi and
Correct.
other big cities, still concentrated within the realm of big cities, but we cannot exclude the possibility of this spreading into provinces at a later stage. So we have had a very interesting conversation about the latest developments taking place in Georgia, and I think that this will continue for some considerable time. And of course, we will be here discussing all of those nitty-gritty elements and different aspects of the ongoing protests in Georgia and some other related developments, not just within this region, but well beyond. So that's all for now, and see you very soon indeed.